report. Let's get some more on all of this. Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of California is joining us. He's a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, thanks very much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
I want to go through a lot of these points. Let me start, first of all, do you believe that Hillary Clinton, her campaign chair, John Podesta, the then chair of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, that none of them knew that the campaign and the DNC were funding this opposition research that led to that controversial dossier?
You know, Wolf, I don't know what they knew, but I think it is important to understand who paid for the dossier, but I don't think that's as important as what's alleged. Because if what's alleged is true, that Donald Trump and his team were working with the Russians to win the election, then it doesn't matter who paid for it. We now have a national security issue on our hands with the president who could be compromised. So I think it's important to get those questions out of the way, but I wish my colleagues in the majority were more concerned about corroborating or repudiating the serious allegations of the dossier.
Well, based on what you know of all the serious allegations in that dossier, how much of it, from your perspective, has been corroborated?
You know what's amazing, Wolf, is it's actually information that's come outside the dossier that's more disturbing. We have found an intent to work with the Russians. There's evidence of that. Our investigation's continuing. But you see the June 9th email, subject Clinton, Russia, private, confidential. Russians are offering information on Hillary Clinton. Don Jr., Paul Manafort, Kushner, they all go. Felix Sater, close to Putin, sends an email to Michael Cohen. Subject line, Putin/Trump. Sater says, we can engineer this so that our boy can win. We just need to get Putin and Trump together. Roger Stone, working with the Russians in the emails he's sending, saying that John Podesta is about to spend his time in the barrel. You also have now, just yesterday, Julian Assange admitted that the Trump campaign contacted him because they wanted Hillary's hacked emails. And of course, Peter Smith, who was reaching out to the Russians, saying he was working on the behalf of Michael Flynn, trying to get emails. Overwhelming evidence so far of an intent to work with the Russians. Still a lot of work to do.
Yeah, because it was Cambridge Analytica that was retained by the Trump campaign that reached out to the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to try to get some of those Hillary Clinton emails that she had on a private server while she was Secretary.
And we haven't heard from them yet, and I think they should come in.
So you're saying that there is hard evidence of collusion right now between the Trump campaign and the Russians? Because you heard all those Republicans on your committee saying there's no evidence at all of any collusion.
Well, evidence has to be tested and developed and compared, to other witness accounts. But right now, there is evidence that the Trump campaign, the family, and the businesses wanted to work with the Russians. Can't draw any conclusions yet, but there is a lot of evidence just outside of the dossier and outside of the classified information that we have reviewed.
Your Republican colleagues want to wrap it up by the end of this year. Is that realistic?
I hope so. I'd love to wrap it up as long as we can do it comprehensively. Right now, we have witnesses who come in voluntarily. They set their own terms as to what questions they're going to answer. They get up and leave when they want to leave, and they don't turn over the documents that we're asking for. I don't think that's how you conduct an investigation, but I am hopeful that they understand the seriousness of this, and let's get it done as soon as possible before the next midterm election.
So who else do you want to hear from?
So I would like to hear from General Flynn, Paul Manafort.
Michael Flynn, who was the president for a brief time, about a month, his national security advisor.
Yeah, Don Jr., Felix Sater, everyone who was in the meeting. And of course, if it leads us to it, I don't think we should take having the president himself come in, because he is implicated in a lot of these communications.
You've called for an independent Russia investigation. Do you not have faith in your committee, the House Intelligence Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Judiciary Committees, the Special Counsel, Robert Mueller? They're all investigating all of this. Why do you also need an independent investigation?
And I appreciate, those investigations, and Democrats on the committee are working doggedly. However, I do think that we saw after the September 11th Commission that when you take this outside of the Capitol, when you try and depoliticize it, you put a bipartisan panel of experts on it, you get to the truth faster. And so I would like to see us do that. I'm afraid that this has become just too politicized. My Republican colleagues have been too incurious, and I am inspired by the work that the September 11th Commission did. It didn't come into place until over a year after the attack, so there's still time for us to do it. Elijah Cummings and I, we wrote legislation to do that. Every Democrat's on board. 2 Republicans are with us. We need more.
All right, stand by. There's more we need to discuss. We're following the breaking news. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. In the meantime, we're back with Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell of the House Intelligence Committee. I want to get your reaction to the testimony, the interview you did the other day with Michael Cohen, the president's friend, his longtime personal attorney. He apparently answered all the questions you asked. Did he successfully debunk, from your perspective, the allegations against him in that not-so-secret dossier?
He's a highly relevant witness, and I can't go into what he said, but Wolf, he's relevant because, first, the president said all along throughout the campaign and during the transition period, I never had any dealings with the Russians, never have tried to do business with the Russians. And then, of course, we learned through correspondence that Michael Cohen has that the president was trying to build a Trump Tower in Moscow during the presidential campaign. But I think most concerning and what really, illuminates why we're investigating this was correspondence that Michael Cohen had with Felix Sater. Felix Sater is very close to Vladimir Putin, and in the emails, he's telling Michael Cohen, we can get Donald Trump and Putin together, we can engineer this, and we can make our boy president. And so that shows that they're mixing business, because Felix Sater is involved in the Trump Tower deal, and politics in Moscow, mixing business and politics, and suggesting how Donald Trump and Putin.
Because Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee, told me the other day that he thought Cohen did answer all the questions they asked him, and that it may not even be necessary, potentially, to re-invite him in for more questioning.
I can tell you, Wolf, he answered our questions, and I felt like it was a productive interview for us. I hope we don't have to bring him back. Again, we want to move this forward. I'm mostly concerned that if we don't resolve this before the next election, that the Russians will be able to, use the discord and the disunity we're seeing in Congress so they can sharpen their knives and attack us again in the midterms.
So from your perspective, he's fully cooperating?
He answered our questions, yes. And we're going to review his testimony against other witnesses and perhaps ask for more documents. But I felt like it was productive, and I disagreed with any account that it was contentious.
All right. The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, he's the Republican. He's now all of a sudden very much involved in various aspects, related, maybe unrelated, the uranium deal back in 2010, in which the Russians got access to U.S. uranium. That's a big issue. Hillary Clinton was part of a committee that signed off on it. How contentious is it right now that Devin Nunes, who supposedly had removed himself from the Russia investigation, is now very much involved in various aspects of it?
It's misguided energy on his part, but worse, it's disruptive. And by doing this, by taking us back in time to reopen investigations, all he does is, again, he reduces our ability to protect our democracy and tell the American people what the Russians did. The American people are going to need an awareness of what type of information campaign the Russians had. The federal resources that we have that we could devote to the states, we need to make reforms so that ballot boxes are secured, and all of that is through. If we have this discord among our leaders, Devin Nunes shouldn't be anywhere near the investigation. The only person in the world who can stop him is Paul Ryan. I wish Paul Ryan would say, you're recused once and for all from the Russia investigation. And Wolf, we do other non-Russia related stuff on the Intelligence Committee, and if Devin Nunes wants to have his credibility to do that, he should just step aside, and I think he's jeopardizing his ability to work with us.
He's moving forward, and now this FBI informant, who apparently was involved in that 2010 arrangement to let the Russians get access to U.S. uranium, he was barred from testifying, but all of a sudden now he's allowed to appear before, I assume, your committee, right?
That's what I've read in the press, and I'm open to looking at that and what the Russians did. But again, Chairman Nunes is putting that ahead of our investigation, and the Russians haven't left. They're still, here, and our intelligence community has assessed that they're sharpening their knives, doing a lessons learned campaign from what they did last time. And I think we should all agree we don't want to be in a mess like this again. We are in a mess of our democracy.
An important development unfolding. Twitter now has banned ads from Russia Today, the Russian TV network, Sputnik-owned accounts, another Russian network. Only happening now. Is it too late? Why now? Because I know you've looked closely into all of this.
Because we know that Sputnik and RT are really working hand in hand with Russia's intelligence services. They were used by the Russians in the 2016 campaign to amplify fake news and run their narrative against Hillary Clinton and to help Donald Trump. We have to be careful not to infringe upon free speech, but Russian intelligence services don't enjoy free speech in our country. We're going to have an open hearing, Wolf. We just announced it today on November 1st. We're bringing in Twitter, Facebook, and other social media platforms so we can talk about how they were weaponized and how we can just be more aware in the next
I'm sure
election.
we'll have extensive coverage of that as well. Eric Swalwell, thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Just ahead.